Welcome to the JTM Windows Podcast, designed to impress, engineered to endure. Here's your host, Jeff Trapanese.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 2 of the JTM Windows Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeremy Wolf, and I'm joined by none other than your host. We have Jeff Trapanese. Jeff, good to see you again, brother.
Good to see you as well. Welcome back, everybody.
Yeah. So let's get into this. I know when considering to do a major home renovation project, that process can be overwhelming. So I thought it would be useful if you talked a little bit about customer preparation when considering a window door project, specifically the budget prep side and style considerations. So please enlighten us.
One of the major things that kind of occurs as we're doing meetings with customers on the initial visit, or they're just not educated enough in what the process is or how much the project can actually cost. And I think what tends to happen is once they do get estimates from their vendors that they're working with, they get a little sticker shock, and it kind of makes them shy away. But the situation is really, the material costs have gone up tremendously over the past few years. They're not what they were 5 or 6 years ago. So, and that goes all the way through with, not only the windows and doors themselves, but also the materials involved, screws, caulking, that type of stuff has all gone up quite a bit. So I felt it was going to be a good service to start having some conversations about what customers need to do to educate themselves on the whole project process, so that going in, they can talk, with some type of confidence and know what they're, ready to spend or how they want to handle the project. So, again, the first biggest thing is really determining what their budget is, what money, they can put into that project. Now, again, when we have different things going on in our home, whether it be a roof, a garage door, windows, those types of things, we're helping to fortify the home and add a lot of curb appeal to it as well. So which one do we do first? Which one's going to have the biggest impact on the home? Windows and doors are one of the main things that I do see that once from beginning to end, and I always tell the customers, hey, make sure you take your before and after pictures, because you're not going to believe it to your house after you're done. So I think coming up with that budget of what's available for you to spend on that project is a major importance. So one of the first determining factors is obviously your cash on hand. What do you have saved up for that project? What access do you have in liquid assets or things like that versus credit cards? Credit cards are obviously, you tend to pay on average about a 3% markup fee to your vendor plus whatever that interest rate is going on. So cash on hand is actually a much better way of doing it because, again, you're not adding more to the cost of the project. The second part of it is, what financing do you have available to you? There's things like Keylock loans, Blue Acorn or Lending Tree, which are different lending companies out there. There's also another program out there called Y-Green. Again, I've said in the past, I'm not a big fan of that program, but those are different options for you to look into, different financing options for that way. Although I think in the market that we have right now, the rates are super high.
So what would you suggest for someone, just the average person, right? As you go through all these different options, and I know there are quite a few grants available and assistance programs for folks depending on income levels. There's a lot of information out there. It can be very overwhelming for just a regular person that's doing this project. What would be a recommendation on how to kind of parse all this information and not get overwhelmed to the point where you're just like, I'll put it on a credit card because I can't invest any more time researching this.
Right. I think the biggest thing to determine is, again, if you don't have cash on hand, I would look at what those interest rates are going to be, and that's whatever you can act. I mean, obviously, with the housing market being where it is, there's a lot more equity in the house. So HELOC loans are a great opportunity for you. I think that's kind of what I've been finding is the HELOC loans do give you better interest rates, probably somewhere in the 8s, with regards to as compared to like Blue Acorn or Lending Tree, which are going to start in the 8s and can go all the way up to 14. And then Y-Green is another one, but again, that can be in the 8s to 10s, and that. But if you ever do sell the house, you have to repay that whole value all at that one shot. So I think again, just kind of comparing what your credit card rate is versus a HELOC loan rate. So talking to a bank or things like that nature, or again those bigger lending options out there like Blue Acorn, Lending Tree, SoFi, any of those types of things. They probably have more short-term loans at sometimes a better interest rate, again depending on your credit rating. With regards to those grants, the My Safe Florida Home we've talked about in the past is a great program. Although they have put a pause on any new applications right now until they kind of get through. They've kind of maxed out the funding that they've got for the pool now, but the Florida State Legislature is supposed to be looking at re-upping it again. And so
I
it's not
missed
to
that
say that it's
window. I
going
guess
away.
I missed that window then.
Well, if your application's in, but if not, keep checking back in the next couple of weeks. So that's part of it, is figuring out, again, what cash on hand do I have, or what financing do I have available to me. So let's say, just arbitrary number, I've got I've looked for some applications for what I can finance for, and I can do up to a $25,000 project, just for a round number. What we want to look at that point is this going to be a short-term investment or a long-term investment? Are you going to be staying in the home for a long period of time, or are you going to be moving in 5 years? Also, is this a rental property for you? To me, that's a major question. A lot of people don't feel it's necessary to put money into windows on a rental property, but it's just the opposite. I think what we find is on older windows, you get, number one, a lot of air going out of the house through old caulking seals. So the air conditioning is working much harder than it is. But more importantly, is as time persists, that caulking on the outside of the house dries out. It stucco cracks, and then you start getting water penetration into the house, which leads to mold and those types of things. So between the roof and the windows, I think those are two major important things to make sure you're upkeeping and your rental property, so as to prevent more significant damage and costs later down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, again, how do we calculate? So now that we've kind of figured out what money we have available to me, how much is the project going to cost, right? That's the big question. And going into it, people have no idea, and can be a poker game. It really, really can be a poker game. I'm one for, when I ask a customer what your budget is, I want to make sure I'm kind of directing them the right path of the right product that's going to work for that budget, what scope of work is going to work for that budget. Whereas, other guys out there may be, oh wow, if they tell me they can do it for 60,000, then I'm going to make sure I get my quote at 60,000 when I can really do it for 40. That type of nonsense. I don't think that's true. That's fair or a good way of talking to the customer about those types of things. But again, at the end of the day, it's a poker game. So educating the customer so that they've got some cards in their hand that they can work with is more important to me. On average, the window and door material itself, the windows with the glass and the frames and all that stuff, tends to be about 70% of the total cost of the project. On average, if you're doing calculations in your home, an average window opening is probably going to run you about $1,500 for material and labor. So when you start counting how many openings you have, and then you're about $4,500 for an average 2-panel siding glass door. And again, that's material and labor to install it. So those are some good entry-level numbers to kind of get a rough idea of what budget you can work up for your own home. And then kind of figure out, okay, well, this is what the amount of the total project is. Can I do it in phases? Can I break it up? Or do I want to do it all at one time? Doing it all at one time is much nicer, because again, you're protecting the whole house. You're only having to, make sure you do a cleaning after all the construction work is done once, versus having to do it twice. But again, a good contractor should take some steps to minimize dust, going throughout the house. So that's minimal. And it also has to do with any touch-up painting. If you're not comfortable in doing the touch-up painting yourself, and you have to hire a painting contractor, sometimes you don't want to pay that twice after the fact as well. So those are all things taken into consideration. And then the last part of it is obviously the permit cost. Depending on the municipality, a permit cost can be as much as 3% of the total project. So if you're dealing with a bigger project, a $60,000 project, the permit's probably going to be somewhere around that $1,000 to $1,250 permit cost. So
interesting. I didn't realize the permit was a percentage of the project. I thought it was just a flat fee. Or is that vary per municipality, or is it standard that it's a percentage?
No, it varies by municipality. So
some of them how it is in Cooper City.
Cooper City, I think, runs about like one. Yeah, there's certain fees, and then it's a total percentage of the cost of the construction. So they have some arbitrary numbers, $10 here or $5 there, but on average, yeah, it's a percentage of the total cost of construction of the contract. So that's the way it usually works. So again, I think Davies solid 3%. Sunrise can be higher. Certain areas can get higher. So, but that's all things that you can look on the city's website and kind of see what those permit costs are going to be. But it's it's always fair for budget just to say the straight 3%, and if it's lower than that, then that's
it's a bonus at that point.
Right? Exactly. So.
Right.
Like I said, so once you've kind of gone around and said, okay, well, this is what this opening is going to cost me. This is going to cost me. Is that going to fit into what I have available? And then we start talking about, well, if it's not, what's the most important part to get done first? Do I want to do the sliding glass doors first? Do I want to get all the windows done first? Do I want to do the upstairs versus the downstairs, or the east wing versus the west wing of the house? Those types of things start to come into play. And that's kind of, I think, the main important topics for figuring out that budgetary part before you even start to think about reaching out to contractors to start finding out what their pricing is going to be. Know in your mind, okay, this is what the project should cost me. This is what I have available to spend. This is what I want to start to tackle. Okay?
Yeah, very useful stuff. Makes a lot of sense. Let's do this. Let's get into some style considerations in another segment. I think that was good for this. That was a lot of useful information, and a lot of people don't realize they should be doing all of that. They just jump the gun and call a contractor in right away and start that conversation before analyzing what they're even doing. So very good stuff, man. We'll get into the style considerations the next segment. Like I said, everyone, thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the JTM Windows Podcast. For more information, contact 954-667-3JTM. That's 954-667-3586. Or email us at jeff@jtmwindowsanddoors.com.